And this one is a civilization game that also incorporates a little bit of area control and some really interesting action selection. And this one is my own personal pick of the week because I really do like the way that the action selection works in this game, but I also do like the way that you train and grow your civilization. And I think all of it is tied together really well, and this looks like a game that's a ton of fun. Each player is going to be competing as a different civilization with their own different strengths and weaknesses. And the game actually offers a bunch of different scenarios with different goals and rules, and you can actually play it as a campaign as well, but you can also just play this as a regular game, just as a one-off scenario. The game plays over 6 rounds, and players are going to be spending time in order to perform their actions, and this is the really interesting part of the game for me, but it's also a really nice thematic tie-in considering that this is a civilization game. Players have this time track at the top of their board with these rightmost spaces blocked off at the beginning of the game, but there are different ways that you can remove those tokens, opening up more time that you can spend on a round. And as you take various actions, you're going to be filling up the different slots there with the different actions that you're taking, as well as any additional hourglass tokens required by that action that represent additional time that that action takes. What's really interesting about this is that any actions that require at least 2 units of time, you can actually put 2 individual hourglass tokens there, or instead you can choose to just put 1 token but flip it to its opposite side with the double hourglass, which you can see here. The difference between these 2 options is that the single hourglasses will both be removed at the end of the round, but if you choose to use a double hourglass token, then that token is going to be remaining on your board into the following round, taking up an additional slot. This means that you'll want to do it this way if an extra action now is more valuable to you than an action later. Most of the actions you perform are going to be coming from the main board, and there's going to be a bunch of different tokens that players are essentially going to be drafting, with some of them being more valuable than others and giving you cheaper access to those various actions. If you choose one of those actions, you're going to be taking that token and putting it into the time slot, as well as any additional time tokens like I mentioned before. And then you'll also be paying whatever costs come with that action, with some of those tokens being cheaper than others, and those ones will most definitely be drafted first. So there is a bit of a race for players to try and get the actions that they want. Most of the available actions do also have an infinite version of it that's printed out on the board that can be taken at any time, but of course this one is going to be the most costly version of that action, and players are only going to want to do that if they absolutely have to. But these different actions are going to allow you to do all sorts of different things that gain different amounts of money, push you up the turn order track, or even gain you these really nice cards that you'll have to build in order to gain their benefits, but when you do, they can grant you with instant and ongoing effects, like gaining you additional victory points, money, or even removing one of these tokens from your own personal player board, or even granting you with your own personal action location that you can use on future turns. Another nice thing about building these cards is that they do have these different icons on them, and if you're able to match those icons with other cards that you've already built, then you're going to be getting as many victory points as icons that you're able to match. This is just a nice additional bonus that's going to be directing you as to which cards you might want to draft into your hand. You do want to be a little bit careful with this, because if you do draft too many cards into your hand, then you're going to be hit with a penalty at the end of the round, costing you time in the following round. Of course, another action you can perform is to actually build these cards, and when you do, like I said, you're going to be putting it into your own personal tableau, but in order to build this card, you need to meet the requirements of the card, and each card is going to have some amount of population that you need for each of the different types of citizens. I did mention before that this game does have a little bit of area control, and there is an area of the board that represents a map where players are going to be gaining influence in the different regions. I'm saying this now because having influence in a particular region could also be a requirement on those cards. In order to determine whether or not you meet the number of citizens requirements, you're going to be checking on your own personal player board, and you're going to have 3 rows of citizens with 2 citizens in each row. Citizens on the left-hand side of the board are going to be moving right each time that you increase their population, but then the citizens on the right are going to be moving left anytime that you increase their population. As you might have noticed, this means that each of those 2 citizens in each row are competing for space on that board. I really like this because it can create really nice decisions in the game where you're going to have to decide which of those 2 citizens you want to specialize in. And of course, moving these citizens along the board to increase their population is one of the actions available out on the main board. But the final main action that you can perform is to place and optionally move any of your influence tokens out on the map portion of the board. The way this works is that an action will allow you to place a certain amount of influence tokens on a region. It might have some requirements with which regions you can place it in, but then however many that you're able to put in a region, you also get that many movement points in order to move those influence tokens however you like. A lot of times you can only place these markers in a region where you already have influence, so using this movement to your advantage can allow you to get influence in regions that you don't have already. But once you get 6 of your influence tokens into a single location out on the map, you'll be able to swap those out in order to build a city there, and that's going to gain you the control of that location for the rest of the game. And then you'll also be gaining the benefit, plus the benefit of any other cities that you already control in that region instantly. The rounds continue like this until the end of the game, with some of the rounds also allowing all players to free up some spaces on their time tracker. But then at the end of the game, it's going to be the player with the most victory points that wins. And if you're interested to check this one out, you can go ahead and find it in the description down below. And of course, follow along to get notified once it launches.